Hey everybody, it's Eric from EPautos.com, your libertarian car guy. I'm still driving this 25 Range Rover Evoque. If you're interested in my review of that, it's up on EPautos, but that's not what I wanted to talk about today. I caught something in the news that I thought was interesting as well as exciting. Apparently there is a ballot initiative of some kind afoot in, I think, North Dakota, which potentially could end the property tax in that state. I doubt it will pass, but the fact that it's even being put forward is hugely encouraging because it might encourage other movements to put that on the ballot. I have been saying for, decades that the property tax doesn't get the attention it deserves in our circles, meaning libertarian / conservative, just generally people who want to be left the heck alone circles, as opposed to the income tax, which is obviously something that we all complain about, or at least most of the people on our side complain about, because after all, you have a right to complain when your money is taken away from you to be used for purposes that you do not wish it to be used for by people who have no right to take it because they didn't earn it. As Thomas Sowell once said, what is a fair share of what somebody else worked for? And I think that was very apt. But as bad as the income tax is, I personally regard the property tax, that is the tax on real estate, homes and land, as being far more pernicious than the income tax for a number of reasons. The first one being that it requires you to constantly generate income to pay property taxes. Let's say that you actually could own your home. I know people like to think they own their homes in this country because their name is on the title. But the fact is that even if you have paid off the mortgage lender, you don't really own your house because you still have to pay the local government this property tax, don't you? I'm getting ready to put mine in the mail. I hate having to use that term, mine. It's not mine, it's what's being imposed on me by the government to finance all of these things that I didn't ask for, that I don't use, and that I object to being compelled to pay for, such as the government schools. And I'll get into that in a separate monologue probably. But my point is that you don't own your home. So you're constantly having to pay rent, so you're constantly having to generate income, unless somehow you've got passive income that's sufficient to keep up with these property taxes, which for most people amount to thousands every year, and for some unlucky people it can be 10,000s or more each year. And truly, it is a vile and despicable tax that makes it such that no matter how hard you work, you can never arrive at a point where you can sort of just sit down and say, wipe your brow and say, wow, I finally made it. I own my house. I own my piece of land. I'm now at the point in my life where I can work if I want to earn the money that I need to get food and pay for utilities. But light lifting, don't really have to earn a lot of money. I own my house. It's my piece of land. I own it. The peace of mind that comes from that is something that Americans have not enjoyed for a very, very long time. And it's something that they could enjoy again. Now, some people get up in arms about it when I talk about this because they'll say, circling back to the schools, what about the schools? Well, what about them? It's not that I am antagonistic towards kids. I like kids. I just don't think that anybody has an obligation to educate children beyond those who produced those children. If you have children, that's an obligation that you took upon yourself, and it's your responsibility to care for them. And more finally, it's, I think, a really important thing to not send them to the government to be schooled, where they'll just learn to be good, obedient, rule-following automatons. Why not school them at home? Or why not pay a teacher that you choose and that you have control over because you're paying them to teach, that you have determined to be competent to teach, not because you have an education degree, but because they have credentials in the relevant fields or competence or experience. You wouldn't send your kid, if you wanted to be an electrician, to some guy who had studied education, would you? You'd apprentice them to a working electrician, somebody who actually understood electricity and how to run wiring and all of that sort of thing. And really, it ought to be the same thing for education. You apprentice a kid, or you take a kid who wants to learn proper English to somebody who is a master at reading and writing proper English. And if you want to teach the kid history, you bring them to somebody who is a scholar, who knows history, and can therefore not just tell you to read chapter 10 and answer the questions at the end of the book, but can answer questions themselves intelligently, deeply, authoritatively. That's what you want your kid to be exposed to, not the mindlessness of government schools. And as far as the rest of it, it's all deadweight, isn't it? I mean, what are you paying for exactly when you pay that property tax bill? All these useless eating government workers, and I, put that term "worker" in air fingers quotes because, they're make workers. They don't produce anything productive. All they do is administer the local government, and we would be just fine without them. The only thing you could make any kind of a legitimate case for that I can see are things like peace officers. I use that term again specifically rather than police. I think peace officers, that's something that probably most of us would willingly pay for. You wouldn't be forced to pay for it. I think most of us would be okay with that. And by the way, the tax for that, or it wouldn't even be a tax because you wouldn't have to pay it on a fee-for-service basis, would be trivially small. The preponderance of the property taxes that you're compelled to pay right now do go for things like the government schools and the government bureaucrats, all of that garbage that is just dragging us all down. Kind of like the water in the Titanic dragged the Titanic down. The Titanic was able to stay afloat for a little while because it was so big and it was a powerful ship. It took a long time for that water to finally overcome the buoyancy and drag the thing down to its watery grave. Well, the United States is kind of at that point right now. And one of the ways that we could recover what we used to call the United States, or what was the United States, would be to get rid of these property taxes, for one thing. Heck, North Dakota is cold, and I'm not a big fan of super cold weather, but I would consider moving to North Dakota if I were able to own my home at last. Jeezy peasy. Anyway, more up at EPautos.com, the web's best libertarian gearhead site. Thanks as always for listening and for reading, and we'll have more for you again soon.